We will soon see a clash of cultures as the Silicon Valley minimal viable product ethos that has spawned Stadia hits the consumer market, sporting limited availability, cut down launch features, and a game library that does appear to be deeply lacking indeed. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. As always, be sure to like, sub, and ring that bell to keep YouTube happy. Of course, though, Google themselves might not be too happy with this video. So with Stadia launching tomorrow, let's actually catch up on what's happening in Google's realm, because it doesn't really look great. You see, they've started to reveal more information as we've got closer to launch, and really it's been a bit shaky. So we'll start off with a list of features that have been confirmed missing by Google. First off, a video from Google giving the Stadia 101 had some fine print that announced that the Stadia controller will only work wirelessly with a Chromecast Ultra at launch. If you don't want to use a Chromecast Ultra, you've got to plug it in. Now that's at launch, so future firmware updates should remedy that, but still. Now the very same video also claimed that third-party controllers must be wired over a USB cable even if they have wireless functionality. It also requires a Wi-Fi connection, so nothing over mobile data. Now, as to whether this means they have these features internally but want to roll them out over time, or if they're simply just promises of future updates, well, we will just have to wait and see. It's worth noting, though, that from a technical perspective, some of these changes could make Stadia worse, like more wireless connections that could result in more latency or more problems, and maybe they're trying to avoid things like that here. I mean, the only truly wireless setup that you're allowed to use is one comprised entirely of Google's hardware and software. So it's either that or the ecosystem for supporting all those controllers and, different implementations of wireless, well, either that or it's just not ready yet. Now, in addition to these core features being missing, the Stadia AMA last week, it answered many of the community questions, and it was just a bit odd. So, physical Stadia kits may not arrive on November 19th for everyone. Still, founders are going to have access to the service with a wired controller and any compatible device, which basically means everything apart from non-Pixel smartphones. Yeah, big surprise Google want to push Pixel. Now, when explaining the delivery issues, it was really weird. The product director, Andre, he offered to deliver by hand a bundle to one lucky person in the Bay Area, and he said, yeah, you can come over and they can play their first game together. And I'm not sure if that's excellent customer service or just a little bit strange. Also in the AMA, they revealed some settings in the app, showing that the limited setting keeps gameplay to 720p and will use about 4.5 gigabytes per hour. That balanced will limit it to 1080p, but it actually said nothing in data usage, and that going for 4K might be 20 gigs an hour. Now that's pretty wild. Like an hour of Destiny 2 gameplay on YouTube comes out to 2 gigabytes at 1080p, so it does look like they're trying to keep that video quality decently high. Still though, I don't think we need to go into how terrible 4.5 gigabytes an hour is for people on strict data caps. Now there are a few other tidbits from the AMA, including that the only aspect ratio supported is 16:9. Now that's fine for most cases, but when it comes to say 2:3 in phones or 21:9 monitors, the letterboxing is going to hurt the experience a bit. Then they also had little to say on yearly pricing, the Stadia Pro free lineup at game pricing, or concerns about accessibility. And they mentioned also one last missing feature, the UI for achievements. Like, the actual achievements are implemented, they just don't have the UI ready for its shipping date, which is just a bit weird. This AMA in general, it was pretty well handled, but obviously, the goal was for it to be a marketing stunt, and I think elements of it did backfire because it just is very apparent how early Stadia is, but how they're still trying to push it out. And they did avoid hard questions about the service's long-term viability, but in fairness, given where they are now, I don't even know if Google could answer questions about long-term viability, even if they wanted to. We had Jade Raymond talking about, she was talking about how real Stadia first games that are first party that use what is enabled by Stadia, that they're years off. So it's they're years off the real killer features of this platform, which, I think they're hedging their bets a little bit, I'll say that much, and I think that much has also been pretty darn clear to consumers as well. The next thing to talk about, though, is the launch lineup. So, originally slated to be a mere 12 games, well, 2 days before launch, they announced an additional 10, bringing the total to a much more substantial 22. Now, the list is on screen, but, it's okay, 22 is certainly decent, but there's not really that many big draws for the platform. Red Dead Redemption 2, that might bring a few people over who, want to try that game but don't have a console. Maybe the sports games will get some attention, but nothing in that list really looks like a Stadia must-buy. The only exclusive on the list is Guild, which is, I mean, it's probably a great game, but I don't think it's going to be like a real headline drawer. Now, to aid with the initial draw, Destiny 2 and Samurai Showdown are free for people with Stadia Pro. But again, those are two of the most latency-sensitive Stadia games, so that's either a very good decision, getting games that people will care about, that, they're latency-affected games, but it shows that Google have confidence, or, if the latency is going to be a problem, then Destiny Crucible and, playing a fighting game on a streaming service, I mean, it certainly will be obvious if there are problems with Stadia. Now, as for this sudden expansion of the Stadia launch lineup, I mean, look, you can take that two ways. There's the more conspiratorial one, which is just them trying to get as much thrown in before launch as they can, and that they're scrambling to do that. Or I think there's the, I'd say, more likely one where it's just a part of their marketing push and they want that big rush of news just before they actually launch the product. So I think that's roughly what's going on. I think, though, the main point here is that, yeah, 22 is a bit more than 12, absolutely, it's nearly double, but it's nowhere near enough to actually compete with what I think a lot of people in their heads are going to be benchmarking a Stadia-like subscription against, which, I mean, is xCloud plus Game Pass, and we'll get onto that later. But overall, I think you can see that Stadia has its fair share of issues at launch and that the team are fully aware of that. It does look like they have enough faith in the core experience of their product, though, and they seemingly are happy to let it speak for itself. And, I think this might work perfectly fine in Silicon Valley, where early adopters, throw money behind a strong concept, hoping that the minimum viable product, often a novel solution to a problem, evolves into a good experience in the future. Their entire approach with Stadia is evocative of that, that they claim to have the problem solved, right? They believe they can run games on their server hardware and get it to players in, acceptable conditions. Everything else to them seems to take a back seat. They're almost treating this like they're a SaaS company, software as a service, not really as much like a consumer product one. At the end of the day, consumers in this industry are more focused about the experience they can get right now rather than getting behind a big technical concept. Ideas don't sell as well as games do, and while Google seemingly believes their MVP is truly special, to the majority of gamers who already have plenty of ways to play video games, it's probably not going to make a dent. I mean, honestly, something like this, to me, I almost think it's more of a trial run to get user data and iron out bugs with early adopters, and I expect the real push for Stadia is going to be sometime next year. I mean, if Stadia aims to be this new platform, cheaper than consoles with a really good experience, their best move is probably to come out swinging in holiday 2020 as a viable alternative to the new wave of consoles. If they truly can get latency down that much, and they can get a, 100, 200 game library by that point and maybe have some good first-party exclusives on the way, then maybe they could compete there. But right now, this initial Founders launch, it really does seem like a bit of a misfire. So overall, with the low upfront costs, I think they can compete with the consoles on price, but they've got to actually prove they compete where it matters, and that is the games. Even if their idea is well executed, streaming games, I mean, it's neither new, it's not novel. You've got Xbox's xCloud offering similar, but with tons more games, and importantly, top-notch exclusives. It also operates on a subscription model alongside the traditional buy-and-play, as then future Xbox Game Pass games will also be available. Now, xCloud already has some 50 games, that some of them are Xbox platform exclusives, and that's just in its early access preview. Stadia's lineup of games that they promised was in the works, that will need to have made significant progress by the time holiday 2020 rolls around. Either that or, Stadia might just find itself in Google's ever-expanding service graveyard. Now look, our Stadia should be arriving in the next day or two, and we will be playing around with it, and even if the physical unit doesn't arrive, we'll try the other experience. So I'll see. I mean, look, my hopes are not very high right now, but I mean, Google is likely to have the best cloud implementation of them all. So as to whether that will be enough to combat the other weaknesses, or, if their plan is to shore up some of those concerns later over time, we'll have to wait and see. But you will get our thoughts on Stadia in the very near future. So overall, I want to know, what do you think about Stadia, right? As we're going into it, is it something you would consider picking up? What do you think about the technology? If that technology had a large game library, would you be willing to do it? Or do you maybe see xCloud and Games Pass and just think, yeah, that's pretty much them done? So I'd love to hear what you've got to say. Thank you very much for watching this video, and with that, I'll see you next time.